Okay, in this lecture, I want to spend some time talking about a typical B2B buying process. Now, I recognize for some of you, maybe you're veterans in the industry and you've seen this before. If that's the case, you know what? Stick with me, okay? Be patient and go through the lecture. The reason being is because from my own experience, I've found the fact that, you know what? Sometimes returning to the basics allows us to be able to see something in a different light. Maybe there's a different angle we can think of throughout that. If this is brand new to you, you know what? This is a pretty important process to recognize. And why is this important? Well, first off, as a salesperson, we need to recognize where the client is within the process so that we can map what we do in our selling process to where they are and what stage they're at within the buying process. Okay, I'm not sure if that makes sense, but let me give you an example. If the client has already went through the process of gathering a bunch of information on different options, and now in their mind they're now at the point where they need to start to evaluate the options and they're getting close to make a decision. If we walk into that meeting and we approach it like they're at the information gathering phase and we come with all these brochures and everything else, mentally they've already went past that point. So what happens is the fact that in that case we run the risk of potentially wasting both their time as well as ours. But also, you know, when they walk away from the meeting and they're sitting there saying, okay, well, you know what, I understand, but you know what, I just feel like we're too far along, or we're just not in sync, or whatever the case may be. And depending upon the client, sometimes we only get one shot at this. So you know what, it's hard to ever get things back on track again. So the key to success here is to understand the overall process, but also to take the time to do whatever we can to understand where they are in the process and map our approach to make sure that it's mapping up to where they are within the buying process. Okay, makes sense? So let's go ahead and dive into the topic. So first off, let's review the steps within sort of the typical B2B decision process. And then what we'll do is we'll circle back and discuss each one in a bit more detail. The process kicks off when the client recognizes that they have a problem or a requirement. Once they've recognized this, then they move into really the information gathering phase. And that's where they begin to not only try to learn more about their problem, but they also begin to search out the various ways to solve those problems. And this may or may not include solutions that they can purchase. Once they've got this information and using this information that they've gathered throughout that process, and they begin the process of weighing out and evaluating their options. And often what they do is they come up with sort of a short list. And once they've settled on a few of these different options or the short list, they begin to evaluate the risks or the concerns that they may have based upon each one of those options on their list. Now, only once that they've went through the process of mitigating sort of the risks or finding ways to reduce the concerns that they may have with any of these different options, will they make a decision to purchase. Okay? Now, the one step that B2B sales reps often forget or overlook is that once a decision has been made, the client will always go through the process of evaluating their purchase. Now, if you recognize this, it's a huge opportunity because this is often the stage where they ultimately decide if they want to do business with you and your company ever again or not. Okay? So what we've done is we've talked about the overall process. Let's take some time to dive into each one. Now, when I'm reviewing each one, my goal is to describe the process for you. But it's also to talk about ways in which you can recognize, you know what, that they're in this particular stage or this particular step in the process. And hopefully give you some ideas or possible ways in which, you know what, you can effectively work with them when they're in this process.